Good morning and welcome to EPR Magazine's live interactive session on emerging opportunities in renewable energy. According to IEA report, India will be the largest contributor to the renewable upswing in 2021. In line with the existing policy and focus on the renewable energy sector, the budget repos a faith in solar by providing an additional capital infusion of rupees 1,000 crore to Solar Energy Corporation of India and 1,500 crores to the Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency. To promote the domestic production and to build the domestic capacity under the Atmanirbhar Bharat, the government will notify a phased manufacturing plan for solar cells and solar panels. Also, there's a wide focus on green hydrogen mission, which holds a key to reduce the dependency on mineral and rare earth element. Today, on this note, you're going to be a part of a live engaging session on emerging opportunities in renewable energy. Our today's expert panelists will talk about the new emerging opportunities across the renewable energy sector. They would also discuss on how these new investments and goals are going to enhance the renewable energy sector entirely in India. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and privilege for me to introduce you to our today's distinguished expert speakers. Mr. Anil Sabu, President of EMA, Mr. Nityanandam Yuvraj Dinesh Babu, Executive Director at EY India, Mr. Rajashekar Budhavarapu, Managing Partner at Assis Advisories LLP, and Mr. Ajay Devraj, Secretary General and an expert in Indian Wind Power Association. So delegates, get ready for an interactive and engaging session on emerging opportunities in renewable energy.
The budget 2021 has some good allocation for capital infusion of renewable energy sector for solar and wind power sector. So how do you look at these capital infusion allocations, like for rupees 1,000 crore and rupees 1,500 crore for IREDA and solar panel manufacturing?
So thank you for the question, Mr. Sudhir. I'll give a very limited response to this. This, of course, is a very welcome move in terms of the capital infusion. But these two agencies are, as you know, are in two different businesses. One is in the lending and another is in basically enabling. So we have to really see whether the MACA is going to go beyond tendering, as Mr. Rajashekar was saying. It's not that the centralized tendering is not working, but there has to be ways and means to innovate it. So probably SECI can use to what the reforms which Rajashekar was indicating to go beyond what they're doing now, and then try to bring about the true innovations, the true reforms which the sector is looking forward to. What we don't want to see is kind of topping up the PSM fund with this fund. Which is a very easy way to showcase utilization. But I think they should try to leverage this investment, maybe try 3 times or 4 times or even 7 to 8 times in terms of what they want to achieve by enabling the sector to come forward to implement more gigawatts. That's the first response for SECI. And for IREDA, as I told you, it's nothing new. They have received a lot of international line of credits, grants, and many other kind of benefits, and their role has been expanded beyond lending very recently because they also manage the incentives released to the wind sector, and now they are also taking care of the solar park technical assistance from the World Bank, promoting solar power. So their mandate has also gone beyond just lending. And in the recent past, actually, after the new leadership at IREDA, there is a lot of new products that are emerging to provide either the working capital or bridge financing. So a lot of things are happening. The product innovation is happening a lot within IREDA. So I feel it is a great move. And again, the beauty lies in terms of how they want to leverage this funding, because every dollar given to institutions like SECI or IREDA shouldn't be deployed just like that. It has to really have a returns much higher than what they are investing. And with the bright minds in both the institutions, We only hope that there'll be a lot of new areas they would invest, innovate, fund also some proof of concepts beyond the R&D mandate by MNRE. I think IRIDA and SECI should see more practicable POCs coming up, and then try to create more avenues for funding on that aspect. So for example, IRIDA hasn't opened up, if I'm correct, any lending for EVs yet in a big way, but I think they are in the making as such. So maybe they can use certain funds for that aspect, and moving then to the storage as a technology and as a commercial product for lending. I think they can do a lot of innovation like that. So it's a great move by the government to identify these two agencies. But again, as Rajshekhar said, these are all Delhi-based organizations. They don't have arms and legs the way the developer wants across the country. So there should be a lot of partnerships that these two institutions should garner across the country, so that the aims and objectives of utilization of such funds can be reached better.
Clean energy and green energy are the key areas of focus for 2021 and even beyond. So how do you see the DISCOMs reacting on the government's impetus?
As you rightly said, that unfortunately DISCOMs in various states are in financial crisis, and as such, each DISCOM is taking up RE differently as per their revenue model or as per their position at present. They need to take it positively, as some DISCOMs is thinking that this is a revenue loss. And I would like to mention that recent notification and changes in electricity rules, the benefit of net metering, it is restricted to residential, agriculture and street light consumers up to only 10 kilowatt, excluding commercial and industrial and other category consumer, which is a really big blow to the distributed solar and rooftop solar program, which is targeted as 40 GW installation by 2022. So you see, in bigger prospect, DISCOMs has to take it with the help of center. They have to go for renewable energy, and should not think of it's a revenue loss, because net metering itself will be really beneficial to both the consumer and in the overall growth prospect of India.
The green hydrogen is the top agenda of Indian government. Now, we have discussed something on that in today's discussion also. So what are the frameworks required to facilitate the hydrogen-based energy sector in future?
But then if one looks at the emphasis, it seems to be more aimed at facilitating what requires to be done in the iron and steel industry. That is one thing that they had mentioned. Okay. Now, the thing of the use of this hydrogen, or to get it from the thing of energy sources, as Rajshekhar had earlier pointed out, it requires the thing of water. Water is a scarce resource. So perhaps if instead of having these things onshore, if we could go offshore, things could work out better. Like if you co-locate these things along with the offshore, like one of the challenges about offshore is that people say it is much costlier than the thing of onshore, perhaps. But if you co-locate and have other things as well over there, like hydrogen, for example, or water desalination plants, and then you supply the entire thing onshore, like you distribute the costs over various other things. This is just one way of putting it.
What do you think regarding the development that can transform the renewable energy sector?
I think it's a very good question. I think if you are going to be, I think Ajay had earlier indicated towards that, if we are going to be liberating this renewable energy sector from just the tender business and allowing corporate PPAs to be happening, or having a different structure where you're allowing 50 megawatt and other projects to be done with a feed-in tariff, which could be calibrated. if you allow that, then the private sector will be very enthused and will be working on its own steam to be making profitable business and matching the needs of the discom and the demand. In absence of that, it's a very distorted market. So currently, if you look at the renewable energy sector, it is so very lopsidedly oriented towards companies which have foreign ownership. We like it, but think about it. We are completely leaving out the MSME from this industry totally, which is completely against the grain of any country. We, on one hand, talk about saying be vocal for global, but for the renewable energy sector, we have very high threshold levels for people to be bidding for the SECI bids, and only if there are large projects, then you have economies of scale. So there is no provision for smaller scale projects to be done. If they are allowed, and whether it is rooftop or customer rent projects or solutions or merchant or corporate PPAs or for own development, innovative projects, then it will bring in animal spirits. So right now it is working on only a medicated, renewable energy market in India is a very medicated market based only on tenders that come by. And do we trust the same public sector institutions to be knowing very well what the future demand and how they should be going for capacity additions and in what ratio? Is there a logic that goes by? Why should SECI 10 wind come now and solar tender number 6 or 14 come by now? Is there a game plan? Is there a mishmash? Is there a modeling effort that is going behind it? Are the needs of the various discoms clearly matched? There is definitely that much of capacity for modeling utilities and seeing what the future demand is, what the current energy mix is, and where is the gap and what not. We have all the modeling capabilities in the country. Are we putting that to use? Is SECI privy to all that? When it is going to discoms to say, I want to have a PSA, is that based on such kind of a thing? So answering to your question, Mr. Sudeep, so if the government needs to work for the discoms, the utilities to do that, which are also government owned, then the government needs to be pulling across all its departments together in a fashion that it is not bureaucratic and it is realistic and dynamic and true to the timing, and be proactive in working to that. While that game needs to go on, but I think there is nothing that stops the regulatory framework to be opened up. Even something like rooftop solar is not without barriers from the institutions for the private sector to play in. So like the 10 kilowatt hurdle that came by. But if you are allowing the private sector, as is what is enshrined in the Electricity Act 2003, if you are only to be working along that, allow a private sector to invest money 3 years in advance, buy the land, buy the grid connectivity, work for the grid connectivity, model the project, build the project, find the buyer, make a PPA with the private guy, pay the toll prices, and be running and operating private sector based business of generation and consumption. And this is far more getting evolved and becoming favorable with the way the discussions are happening with the reform of the LCD bill and the introduction of new private players. So my answer to the short answer to the long thing that I said is allow private sector to play the game as is enshrined in the LCD Act 2003, open access, and let them design and do the projects. For the tenders that you are issuing, make sure that the threshold levels for people to be eligible for bidding is, for example, in South Africa, you need to have the land, you need to have a project design, you need to have the contracts with the OEMs, you need to have a pre-feasibility financeability of the project. With these documents that you give it to a centralized agency, they ratify whether they are okay. Then the developer is authorized, eligible to make the bid in the competition. So then you can come down to 2 rupees 70 paise, 77 paisa, or 1 rupee 99 paisa, or 1 rupee 50 paisa. as the case may be. But without these back forcing this homework being done for the developers, you are playing a blind game, right?
Like, on behalf of all my fellow panelists, I'd like to thank the organizers for having put this thing up in the first place. Like, perhaps it is something that was the need of the hour to be looking at the thing of the opportunities ahead of the RE industry. The opportunities are plenty as outlined. Like, the thing is that like when you have the thing for the RE industry, the electrical industry, the electronics industry, all of them also benefit. It's not a thing of only one industry that is going to be benefiting out of this. The other thing is that we have constantly used this word green. Now, the thing is that this thing of green is something that will happen not only if we keep using renewable energy, but also ensuring that it reaches the last person down the line at an affordable cost. There are, you have the normal customer, you have the C&I customer, the commercial and industrial customer. The commercial and industrial customer is keen to reduce his costs, which is why he or she has invested in renewable energy. Like, there were various promises made to these industrialists when they set up these captive generating plants. Like, can we ensure that all these things are fulfilled? Not just now, not just for the past or for the present, but for the future also. The other thing is that we have to encourage more and more of investments in RE. Like, it needs, there is a strong need to relook at the kind of regulatory conditions that we are having. Like, my own experience in dealing with the Ministry of Power as well as with the Ministry of Renewable Energy is that they seem to be open to ideas. Okay? Like, what I find probably lacking is a lack of coherence in the ideas that we take forward to them. So that, I think, if we work on, is something that can actually happen.
Thank you so much, all our panelists, for sharing your expertise and experiences and the valuable inputs for this session. Before wrapping up today's session, we would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Mr. Anil Sabu, Mr. Nityanandam Yuvraj Dinesh Babu, Mr. Rajashekar Budavarapu, and Mr. Ajay Devraj. I would also like to thank Mr. Sudhi for moderating the panel discussion. Thanks to all our delegates, our viewers, and our panelists. With this, we would like to announce the closing of today's session. I request you to stay tuned with us for more such sessions. Until then, thank you and goodbye.